Hi, it's Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing Live number 120. And today we're going to be talking about how to release your breath and to create your singing voice. I just had that question asked me today in a YouTube comment, so I want to cover it. I think it's a very interesting question. And so here's the question for you. What or wouldn't it be great if every time you opened your mouth to sing, you were just brilliant. Everything started out perfectly, right? Well, after today, it will. So, how are you? I want to ask you this question. Those of you who have just joined us, do you like the way your voice feels and sounds when you start singing? Do you like the way it feels and sounds when you start it? Right when you start up. You like it? Yes or no? Let me know in the comment section below. So it's 2 o'clock. It's at the top of the hour wherever you may be, or the bottom of the hour. I think I've got some viewers in India where we're about 30 minutes off. We're at the top of our hour, and I think you're at the bottom of your hour. So, hi, welcome. I'm Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing Live, and this is number 120. Believe it or not, I guess that's, well over 2 years now, we've been doing these live broadcasts. So I want to say hi to, hey, Jorge, nice to have you here. Hello, nice to say hi. Eat the Book 144. I asked the question, do you like the way your voice sounds when you first start singing? And he said no. And I'll tell you what, there are many of us who have experienced that same thing. So this is going to be a good topic today. And I think that it was a really sincere question that someone on my YouTube channel had asked me, and that is, would you please do a video on how to release your breath, and how to create your singing voice. And at first it seemed rather like a convoluted question, not really knowing exactly what he wanted me to talk about. But I'm going to take a stab at it, and I'm going to see if we can't get to the bottom of it. So when I was I was studying voice a number of years ago. Let me see, it would have been back in the early 2000s, like 2002 or somewhere around 2001 and 2002. I was learning the song, in my lesson, I was learning Wheels of a Dream, which is from the show Ragtime. And I would start to sing, and my teacher would say, no, it fell out. And then I'd try something else, and he'd say, "Oh, be okay for a minute." And then I'd say, "No, it's falling out." And so anyway, I don't know why, but as a student, I didn't ask as many questions probably as I should, and I wasn't exactly sure what to do or what he meant by it was falling out, and what I should do about that. And I'm still not exactly positive, but I think that what he was directing me to do was maintain some of the vertical resonance, and that's neither here nor there, but in other words, kind of start my tone quality in a way that was kind of a mix between chest and head, and not just jam it down into the bottom of my voice. That's my opinion. So, in other words, when I first started singing the song, I can't remember the pitch. I don't remember what key it's in. So, maybe I should get my book and check it. But I'll just pick a tone. I'll just pick a pitch. So that's in the key of C, and that's kind of the melody. I see his face, I hear his heart beat. Well, it seemed like I did that 100,000 times, and about half the time it wasn't exactly what he wanted to hear. So it was the way I was initiating, using my breath and initiating the tone or my singing voice. So we'll talk more about that today. I'm not saying I did it exactly like I just showed you, but that's the song, and that's what I was like trying to figure out. Hi, Nuno Silva. Nice to have you here. And Yapadios, hi. Great to have you here. So let's dig into this a little bit here. Are you just brilliant right out of the singing gate, so to speak? Are you just, when you walk out on stage and take the mic or start singing, if maybe you're wearing a microphone, is it always just a great start every single time, and are you really happy with it? I would say that it's more so yes now for me than it used to be. And I feel like I've gotten more consistent, and I'm, most of the time when you're singing a musical theater piece, everything's moving so quickly, there's not a lot of time to dwell on how the first moment was. However, if you know you're not starting well, then you get the butterflies. You are so nervous because you're concerned about how it's going to start out. We don't want that, do we? Okay, so how about you? Are you brilliant the moment you start out of the gate? Let me know down below. In the comment section, yes, I am brilliant every time I start to sing. I would say maybe, are you solid? Are you feeling good about it? Yeah, or you're not. You don't necessarily have to be brilliant, but do you feel good about it? I feel pretty good about it now, but I don't think I always did. Okay, so I want to give you this exercise here. I want you to do something that is going to seem really crazy, but I want to analyze how we make sound and how we use our breath to make sound whether we talk or we're singing, okay? So do this for me. I want you to exhale every particle of air out of your lungs. And so it would be like, you ready? I mean, force every bit of air out of your lungs and then sing ABC, or the Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or anything you want to sing, or recite it. So, for example, I'll show you. Ready, Marty? Here we go. Nice to see you. And LeQuack, hi. So exhale, force every bit of air out of your lungs. Just squeeze every bit out. Ready? Go. I see his face. And start to say anything or sing anything in that condition. If you didn't try it, try it. It's rather shocking. You think you should be able to get something out, some little sound. Did you try it? It's an interesting feeling. We've all probably at some time in our lives had the wind knocked out of us, right? And as the wind was knocked out of you, you couldn't vocalize. Sometimes when little kids get hurt, if you're a parent and if you've had children, they fall and they hit hard and they land on the ground or they land on the floor, and all of us you're holding your breath, waiting for them to cry, and sometimes they can't cry because they knocked the wind out of them. Well, as soon as they get their wind back, well, they really make some noise. So anyway, Did you do it? Let me know if you did that little experiment. Force all the air out and then try and sing a line of something. Not so good. It's an interesting experience. So, what does that tell us about how we create sound? So, I'd say number one, the number one thing we have to have is we have to have air. We got to have air to create sound. And so, in order to initiate the sound, there has to be an air flow. There has to be an air supply coming from our lungs. And then the air interacts with the vocal cords. So what do the vocal cords do? Well, the vocal cords resist the air. They resist the air, even if it's just for an instant, some fraction of a millisecond, and then they start to vibrate. They start to interacting with the air. They begin vibrating with the air coming through the vocal cord. Now, if there's no air, there's no sound. So we have to have that air. Even if you're not taking a big breath, I mean, you can have a little bit of air and still make the sound. And you have to have vocal cords. We've probably all heard somewhere in our lives or on a recording of someone who had to have a laryngectomy, the removal of the larynx, so there's no vocal cord, and so they have to, I don't know exactly how it's done, but belch air and create a sound with their tongue and mouth and so forth, and it's, that's when you're grateful you have a voice. So it takes air plus vocal cord. So when let's talk now about, I made a couple notes here so I don't get too far afield, but we mix the air and the vocal cord. It's a combination of those two things. They're interacting together. The air hits the vocal folds, and they resist the air. The vocal folds resist the air a little bit momentarily, and then they open and close, and they start this vibration process, and that creates a sound wave. The sound wave is carried into the spaces in our throats and into our mouth, and it activates the lining and the tissue around us, and so it creates some sympathetic vibration that we can feel the vibrating in our. You can put your hand on while you're talking, and you can feel that vibration, or you can feel it down here in your chest. And when you're singing, you can do the same. And up on when the pitch gets high, the vibration moves up into our up above the roof of the mouth and into the head cavities. So those are some of the things that happen. So that's how the system works. But what about when we create sound? What about when we create what about when we use our breath? Let me pause right there and say hi to audiophile. Hi, tried it. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? All of a sudden you realize how vital air supply is to speaking and singing. How often can you do this exercise? That's cool. I do it as often as you want. Just don't faint. Hey, George, nice to have you here. So if you've just joined us, I invited our listeners and viewers to expel all of the air from their lungs, force it out, and then try and sing a line. His face. Nothing comes out. Try it. Force every particle of air out and then try and even just recite something or sing anything. Quite an experience. So we've got to have air supply, and we have to have the vocal cords. Now look, let's take a look at the vocal cords for a minute. Do this with me. Number one, just breathe. Open your mouth and breathe in and out through your mouth. So when you do this, the vocal cords are not resisting the air. The vocal cords actually open. And so air is just passing through. And so we're not going to get any air. We're not going to get any sound. You might hear the air passing through or passing past, moving past the cords or moving through the mouth. If I lower my larynx, I get a little bit deeper, different kind of a pitch. But I'm not getting any sound per se. I'm not getting any voice. I can't talk with this. I could probably make something up, like just with the space in my mouth. But no one's going to hear it. So the vocal cords, if they're open, don't participate in the creation of the sound and the voice. So that's with the cords completely open. Now do this and say, with an H, just say, hi, 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 ho, 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 ho. With the H, ho, hi, hill, hill, hill. There's not a complete kind of you get a kind of a partial. The vocal cords are coming together and making sound. Hi, but there's air passing through them. Do it on we, we. Maybe even blow a little air and say we, 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 we. Even with the we, you can feel air coming through, and if you put your hand over your lips or over in front of your mouth, we, 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 we. You can feel the air being pushed out through that W. Wee, 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 wee. So there's air escaping fairly nicely. If we resist the air with our tongue and the letter S, we're not resisting the air with the vocal folds. We're resisting it with our tongue. So if I do a Z and a hum with it, now I'm resisting it with my vocal cords. You can hear the first one I'm doing just with my tongue and like this, the letter S. And then when I do it with when I add my vocal cords, I'm getting two sounds now. I'm getting the S sound together. It's kind of similar to if I don't resist the air, listen to what happens. I'm resisting it with my lips, but not with the vocal cords. If I start resisting the air with my vocal cords, if I just say I'm resisting it with my sound, but I'm not resisting it with my lips. Now I have my lips. So I get a double resistor. I'm resisting the air with my vocal cords. And in other words, the vocal cords are open and closing, and ever so slightly that's holding the air back and letting it pass through and so forth. And then I'm doing the same thing with my lips. Both of them at the same time. Interesting experiment. So the H sound, the W sound, the Z sound, you can feel the resistance of the chords and the resistance of the air with the tongue, and but as far as the vocal cords themselves, that's really what's interacting with the airflow to create the sound itself. There's a sound, but what kind of sound is that? You really can't sing with it. So you could maybe a good bugleist could probably play a tune with his the embouchure of his lips. I can't do it, but you could maybe create some kind of a production of sound with the lips, but it's really down here, isn't it? Now here's a kind of a third level here. Think about the vocal cords completely stopping. Like you're going to lift a heavy weight. Try that once. Don't let any air through at all. So somewhere in between, we can't sing like that, right? We use that to lift heavy weight or go to the restroom, or there's several reasons for that. Or we do that to stop food and water from going down the trachea, the windpipe. Close it off. But there's another thing called a glottal stop. And by that I mean it's a sound, but the vocal cords essentially close and then are kind of blown apart. If I say ah, 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 I, you get kind of this feeling of chords being completely closed and then an opening. I, as opposed to hi, 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 I, That's a glottal stop. So if I wanted to say, if I'm singing, I hear his face, I see his face, I hear his heartbeat. There's only like one little glottal stop in there. Glottal stops have that quality of completely. Glottis is the chord, the vocal chords themselves, and that if we have a glottal stop, that's the coming together of the chords from them. I. That's so you got them completely closed together. A, and you can do it easily with certain consonants or vowels. Let's say K. Well, it's different. If I said K, that's not necessarily a glottal stop. Say the word K and feel what is stopping the air. It's the action of the tongue closing against the soft tissue in the back of the throat. So there's kind of a closing of the tissue superior to the glottis, above the glottis. So I'm resisting the air not with a glottal stop, but with the tissue above the glottis. Kind of an interesting experiment. Of course, we can resist the air with, like, if I said B. I'm not really resisting air until with the B, with my lips, or P. But if I said a, a, that's a glottal stop. A, or E, E, I, O. U doesn't really do that, does it? U, Y. Those two don't really create a glottal stop. But A, E, I, O, oo, U, oo, oo. You can feel that glottal stop. O, oo. So is the glottal stop. So we've got to figure out when we start singing how we want to initiate, in combination with the breath, the condition of the vocal cords, and it's going to be dictated a lot by the word you're singing, and also the kind of music you're singing, and also the pitch, where the pitch lies, and kind of the nature of the song. If it's a loud start, then it's going to the vocal cords are going to hold more air back, so that when the air breaks through the vocal cords, and the vocal cords release that built up air behind it, all those molecules piling up behind the, below the vocal folds, and all of a sudden they open and pow, you get a big explosion of sound. This sudden release of the air molecules creates this loudness. So much of how we start or initiate our voice with the air and the vocal cords is going to depend on the dynamic, how loud it is and so forth. So let's talk about the third element here. Well, let's talk about the combination now of air and vocal cord and what we end up getting. So if you just said, let's do an exercise again where we start the airflow like you're going to say hi, and just do and don't worry about the pitch, just wherever it's comfortable for you, wherever you're at. For the ladies, it'll be up here somewhere. For us guys, a little bit lower. It just depends on the tessitura of the voice. But about where you speak. Just relax it and just start the air. And just say with an H. Now try it with UH. It's a slight glottal stop, isn't there? And then now sustain it a little bit. Give it a little bit more air and just say maybe a little hum. The voice is at rest. You're just saying. So that's in a very relaxed fashion how the voice initiates. The air starts coming through the vocal cords. That's now without a glottal stop. The air, you're moving the air through like with an H. Now try this and sustain it. So we've got a pitch of some kind, and now just sustain that. Give it a little duration. So now we've got the airflow, the vocal cords close in on the airflow, and then open and close, create that little vibration, and a sound wave is released. So now add a little bit of, let's talk about the quality. Let's add vibrato to that. So airflow, sound, the chords closing over the air. Oh, you can change the vowel now, whatever you want to do. But start it. Oh, ho ho ho. Oh, and add a little bit of vibrato to it. So there's an element of quality to the release of, so we're releasing some breath, right? If I wasn't releasing the breath, I would be stopping it completely. If I release it with a glottal stop, if I'm releasing without without that glottal stop, and it doesn't come out quite as the word I see his. But what if I were to try and find some place in between that where I have a little bit of a glottal stop, but not a real loud glottal stop, let's say. So in other words, I'm not pushing a lot of air. If I push a lot of air, it's I see. So if I just bring the amount of air I'm pushing, I see his face. So this release of breath, we have to be careful not to release so much, or be pushing so much air. The vocal cords have to hold back, and it comes out too loud so that it overpowers what maybe it's a soft entry. So there's all these different combinations that cause us to initiate a different kind of tone or different kind of singing voice. So if we take the voice, so we take air, close the chords over it, that's a vibrato. We've now initiated we've got a breath flow. We've got the chords closing and starting to interact and to resist a little bit of the air and creating that sound wave, and then we add we sustain that, so we have a little bit of the duration of that sound, and then we add some quality to it, the vibrato. So we've got pitch, duration, and quality, and there are other things that can affect what the sound sounds like. So what are some other things? And so that's in a way a little bit of another topic, but it definitely impacts the creation of the singing voice. It impacts the quality of sound and so forth. And that would be the position of the larynx. If the larynx is low and resting, which is generally where it should rest, relaxed and low and down, without any tension, without any squeezing of any kind. When we speak, that should be the way it is when we sing. And yet there are times I've had students who have a rather, their larynx seems to be a little bit high, and maybe it's just lifestyle tension. Maybe it's something they kind of grew up with because they couldn't be heard over their siblings, so they had to have this thing up here like that. I don't know. But sometimes a larynx is a little elevated. I think mine was when I first started singing. And I certainly elevated the larynx when I tried to sing higher, because that's how I just felt like if I could stretch it a little bit, that I could hit the note. And so the position of the larynx does affect the quality of the sound. So listen to what we take these steps, and then I'll do it first with the higher larynx. Now I'm going to lower it while I hold that. Let me see if I can do it without. Let's do it on a round a more. Let me take the word. Let me take the vowel e. Or now imagine the larynx up, and the distance is from here. So I'm increasing the space inside by lowering the larynx. And so that changes the quality of that tone. Sorry for the phlegm. You can hear there's fuller, rounder, more overtone there with a little bit more space by keeping the larynx or bringing the larynx down, and it gets a little bit thinner and a little bit thinner. I guess that's the best way to describe it when the larynx is up. And so the position of the larynx can affect the quality of the sound. And so that's another part of this mix of creating your singing voice. Now, my emphasis as a teacher is just to keep the larynx at the level of where you speak, if you're speaking normally. But if you come into the studio and you talk like this, then probably I wouldn't say that. Just sing like you talk. No, I wouldn't want that necessarily, because they may be that their voice is really down here. Haven't you ever had that experience? I mean, I can remember coming into some voice lessons just hyper-stressed over my day of work, just wound up tight, and everything was up, everything was tense. And so it was, about 3/4 of the lesson over, I finally got relaxed. The larynx was coming down. Everything was starting to work as you hope it will when you start singing. I think we get a little bit better at that, but we still have to address that. No matter how much time and experience we've had singing, we still have to work on relaxing and allowing this tension to not be present in our singing voice. Now, the other element that gets in part of the mix, I'm doing a lot of talking today, but you know what? I'll answer any questions after I get done, is the condition or how the vocal cords are, how they're coming together. Now, if the vocal cords aren't coming together firmly, let's say, then I could speak very loudly. But if the vocal cords are not closing appropriately, there's a great deal of air that escapes. And depending on what I'm doing, I'm struggling. I maybe want to sing this way. I feel, I see his face, I hear his heartbeat. Sorry, I see his face, I hear his heartbeat. It's really hard. I run out of air because the vocal cords are allowing an air leak. They are not closing firmly. I'm getting lightheaded. It's the equivalent of this. If my fingers were vocal cords, I'm not holding them. I'm not holding this. I'm not bringing them together tight enough to even hold on to, you know, it's so much air is passing through that it's just, you know, you leave this gap in there and you've got an air leak. Well, that causes a breathy tone. That causes an airy tone. It weakens the tone, so it's hard to hear. And it also, believe it or not, contributes to an elevated larynx, because the nervous system kicks in and says, well, look, if we go higher, then maybe it'll get stronger. And so the larynx starts going up because we're trying to get some more power. And all we're doing is compounding the situation into a real problem with the high larynx and the vocal cords coming apart. So the terminology is called adduction, the bringing together to a midline. So if this is the middle, one vocal folds here and one vocal folds here, bringing them together is adducting them, bringing it towards the midline. And depending on the quality of the adduction, the firmness of the adduction, or the depth, if these are the vocal folds now in terms of depth, the depth of the adduction and so forth, and and how firm they are, and overall ease of function and so forth, consistency and that kind of thing, that's going to dictate the tone of or the creation of their singing voice, and what it sounds like. If the cords are not adducted sufficiently, you're going to get a breathy tone. If they're too tight or too squeezed, there's not going to be enough air getting through. And so you're going to be squeezing the sound. And you might combine that with a high larynx, and then you sound like this. So you got a little bit of a squeeze going. I see his face. I see his face. I hear his heartbeat. So now I got my larynx up, and I'm kind of squeezing the vocal cords. So to summarize this, what we're really looking for is a balance of the air from the lungs to the vocal cords, interacting with a balance of the muscle of the vocal cords. We don't want the muscle to squeeze so tight that the air can't get through, and we don't want the air blasting so hard through the vocal cords they're blasting them apart. And so there's a lot of air escaping. That might be caused by under-adducted cords, or maybe you're just pushing too much air through. So we want to find this balance where we've got just a perfect interaction, or an appropriate interaction of air and muscle. And I'm doing it like this because you remember the teeter-totter. If I have too much air on this side, now the air is overpowering the vocal folds. And so we're going to get a lot of air escaping. Or we're going to be fighting because we can't hold back the air. We're pushing so much air, Or if we get it we get the muscle and the cord so tight, now the vocal cords are squeezing so tight that we're not getting the appropriate function of the vocal cords to interact with the air. And so we get this squeezed tight sound. It's hard to illustrate that. I see his face. I hear his heartbeat. So I can really compress it. But that's not optimal for a lot of different reasons. And so we want to find this balance of air and muscle, so that I see his face, I hear his heartbeat. No, that's an octave higher. I see his face, I hear his heartbeat. And so once you start finding this balance, then it kind of starts to, I don't know how to describe it, but you start to memorize that feeling. The nervous system begins to accept that feeling. And, so you start to find that quickly and utilize that in the quality and production and the release of your breath and the creation of your singing voice. All right. Singing 101, but it's really, really, it's fundamental and it's important. And so that's what exercises are designed to do, is to help you find this balance between the air and the muscle. So I might, and if I can't do it with the words, I might just do it on ma 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 So I think I'm high. I don't think they go to the G in that song, but you get the idea. So once you can do it, maybe with just an exercise, and you start putting the words back in. So then there, of course, introduces the vowels and the consonants and all those things, which interact with the air and the tone coming from your vocal cords. And that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother lifetime of work. But to address the, how do you release your breath and create your singing voice? That's how. Okay. Anybody got any other comments? Did anybody stick around? Okay. So, any questions or comments? Because if not, we'll call this a broadcast today. All right. So, yeah, George said nothing came out when he got rid of all the air. Akshay, hello. How are you doing? Audiophile says Count Dracula 1, 2, 3 glottal stops. Okay. My larynx is always a bit high, and it's become a habit. I have to really force it lower when I sing. Any exercises that might help with this? Yeah, anything that adds kind of a dopey sound, duh. If you put your hand here in your Adam's apple and say duh, not just duh, but duh, a real kind of a stupid duh, it activates muscles that pull the larynx down. And so instead of saying duh, say gee with a little bit of that dopey sound. And then do any exercise with that. Gee, 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 gee. Gee, 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 gee. And if you stay dopey, it'll go a little bit hooty. Gee, 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 gee. Gee, 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 gee. Gee, 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 gee. Any exercise like that, where you kind of add that dopey sound on gee, goo, guh, even go, 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 go. Of course, you wouldn't sing that way, but doing the exercise helps retrain the nervous system and gets that larynx. You become used to the feeling of the lower larynx, so that it starts to be available to you to have the larynx down a little bit when you start singing, and good things happen that way. Hi, Gigi, nice, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Probably from tension, probably so. Great info, thanks. All right, you guys, it looks like a shorter broadcast today. We've been going 45 minutes or so, 48 minutes. Thank you for joining me. Are there any other questions that I can address for you today? And if there are, let's do it quickly. And if not, we'll circle back again in a week, and I'll pick up another interesting and exciting bit of information about singing. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing Live. Thanks for joining me today. If I'd love to hear your comments, the things that you experienced during this particular session about maybe a discovery you made in your own voice. Would love to have you share that. So just comment in the section below. If you don't know your vocal type yet, this is another way of helping get the larynx down. Knowing your vocal type will explain to you how you tend to go through your bridge. So if you're pulled chest high larynx or flip falsetto, it's probably because the larynx is up, and so getting your vocal type and the exercises to help you deal with your vocal type is going to help get the larynx down as well. So go to, in the description below this video, there is a PDF there that says Get My Vocal Type, and it's got links to a vocal test, to videos about your vocal type, and to exercises that you can do for your vocal type to get the larynx down and to get the quality of your singing voice in that bridge especially. That's the area where it wants to break. And then download that PDF, and it'll save you a lot of time. You'll get right to it. All right, thanks you guys. Thanks for being with me today. Very nice to see each of you. I'm Chuck Gilmore with Power to Sing Live, and I'll see you in, Power to Sing Live. I'll see you inside the next video.